plaintiff for like 45 years.
Yeah.
He kind of looked familiar when I was talking to him. Okay, well, yeah.
We're going to go ahead and start tonight's meeting, gentlemen. So good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is April 24th, 2023, and the time is 6:01 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present to turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet on the front table. I would like to take a few moments to review the procedures the commission will follow tonight. First, the commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items, and for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including staff recommendations. Any letters or other communications received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case in response to staff report. Next, we will have comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked by the commission. The commission shall then deliberate the case and ask any questions of the applicant, the staff, or any other party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless a request are approved by the commission. The commission will then formulate and vote on the motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte communication placed in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda items. That being said, call to order. Call the meeting to order, which it is. Roll call.
We'll just want to note that there's no commissioners present.
All right. Got that. Sorry. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Sorry. Oh, do we have someone on the phone tonight?
Yes, I'm Aaron Vargas from Back Pocket Brewing.
Okay. Any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Item number 3. Okay, I'm seeing none. So we'll move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes for March 27th of 2023. Do you have any additions or corrections? Motion.
I'll move to approve.
Here we have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public hearing, Niemeyer edition, minor subdivision proposal on parcel number 8946071000006. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, Marilyn Niemeyer is trustee of the Edwin O. Niemeyer Revocable Trust, has filed a one-lot minor subdivision of property identified as parcel number 8946071000006. This subdivision application is being considered concurrently with the conditional use permit application, which is the next agenda item. It needs the proposed 4.5 acres for outdoor landscaping, which provides landscaping and other services. This proposal is properly noticed on the Sioux City Journal legal section on April 8, 2023. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via an April 14th letter about tonight's April 24th public hearing. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been notified and requested a comment. The Woodbury County engineer found the proposal in compliance with Iowa code closure requirements and found the lot as adequate access. The engineer did reference the consistency with the legal description and stated that the remaining land will need to receive a direct permit unless an easement agreement is included. After clarification, both parties have made arrangements via purchase agreement. The purchase agreement states that the closing buyer agrees to grant access to the easement to the seller and documents ancillary, therefore, so the seller can access the foreign real estate. territorial review as required by Iowa Code 354-9 was completed by the City of Sioux City on March 27, 2023. With passage of City Council Resolution number 2023-0311, the property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zone District and is not located in the special flood hazard area. Based on the information received and requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, this proposal meets the appropriate criteria for approval. I will note that this parcel directly abuts the corporate line with Sioux City, and it was very unique in this situation for Sioux City to leave it in the county versus proceed forward with the annexation, which they're going to do through the subdivision. And you would see within the packet that Sioux City has put together an annexation agreement, and their plan is if they ever get water out to the location, then they would go toward the annexation. But in this particular area, they elected to approve the subdivision plat that was brought before them, and basically leave it in the county where, of course, commission is reviewing it. That's what I have.
Do we have anybody here to represent the Niemeyer party? Yes. Not Niemeyer, someone else?
My name is John Daniels. I'm an attorney for Mosier Landscape. Mosier Landscaping is buying this property from the Niemeyer Trust. My address is 600 4th Street, Sioux City. As Dan mentioned, the ordinance that the city of Sioux City has requiring annexation agreement for a property that shares a boundary on the city limits line was intended primarily when it was adopted for considerable development going on the south side of Williams. This property is northeast, and when the city staff recognized that the nearest water and sewer is at 46th and Floyd Boulevard, it's going to be a very long time before utilities are installed at our address on Barker Avenue. So we reached a compromise with the city that I think is very reasonable, that they're not going to enforce an annexation agreement until such time the city water and sewer are available at the site. The engineer referenced the easement. We did then subsequently include, and it's in your packet, a copy page from the purchase agreement between my client and Niemeyer's that recites that we will execute an access easement in favor of the rest of the Niemeyer property upon or as part of our closing of the purchase sale transaction. I would like to further highlight seven folks were listed on 1,000-foot abstracts. All 7 of signed letters of support welcoming Mosier Landscaping. I can speak on the CUP, but I'm thinking you're going to take that up as another round. Thank you. Well, yeah, we're Mosier. I'll introduce my client.
Is there anyone else here in the public that wants to address this item? No. What are your wishes?
Public hearing. With a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing is now closed. Comments from the chair? Commissioners? Comments or questions? Motion if we're ready to move on.
Make a motion to approve the Niemeyer addition to the Board of Supervisors.
We have the easement to the driveway.
Staff would recommend basically approval as the supervisors.
Okay.
Because they have that in purpose.
Okay. Just making sure we're clear on that.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say one. Great. So we're ready for the next item on the agenda, a review of conditional use permit application for landscaping services, nursery business, and other related uses, et cetera, on parcel 8946071000006. Okay, Dan, do you want to introduce that information?
Yes, it will sound very similar. Marilyn Niemeyer has custody of the Edwin O. Niemeyer Revocable Trust owner and Sid Mosher applicant, who's with us tonight, has filed for a conditional use permit application to use the property for landscaping and a nursery on the portion of the property identified as 894607100006. Although horticulture production, including nurseries and greenhouses, are principally allowed uses in the agricultural preservation zoning district, a conditional use permit is required for similar landscaping uses such as tree services, sand and gravel storage, and feed and seed sales, fertilizer storage, distribution application, and other related uses to landscaping businesses. This conditional use permit application is, of course, being considered concurrently with the minor subdivision process to establish the 4.5 acre lot. The proposal for conditional use has also been noticed in Sioux City Journal's legal section on April 15, 2023. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via the April 14th letter about the Board of Adjustments on May 1st, 2023 public hearing, as tonight is a review session of the zoning commission. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been notified and requested comment. This property is located in the agricultural preservation zoning district and is not located in the special flood area. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval, and staff recommends approval of this request.
Again, do we have someone in the public that would like to address this item on the agenda?
We have John Daniels, 600 4th Street, Sioux City, for Moser Landscaping. To circle back to the, I think, unique circumstance that all the neighbors are very much in favor of these folks locating in that area and have given the others support saying so. Next, the application that was prepared by Sid Mosher of Moser Landscaping, very detailed and I think very complete in addressing the 6 criteria and for conditional use permit. Landscaping, which is in the title of the name of their company, is a bit of an orphan in the ordinance. We don't find a direct reference to landscaping anywhere. So we're describing in the application the services that they provide and giving you, we believe, many places in the ordinance where you can hang your hat to find, to approve this project. Sid Mosher is here and would be happy to answer your questions or tell you more about his business, whatever the pleasure. Or have you read enough, or would you like to hear more from Sid?
We're good. Yeah. Thank you. No other questions at this point, Tony? A motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
A motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah. Any further discussion or questions at this point? You're hearing none.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. So are we ready to entertain a motion on this item?
A motion to approve the conditional use request to allow this property to use for landscaping, nursery business, with associated uses including tree service, sand, gravel storage, feed and seed sales, fertilizer storage, distribution application, other related to.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye. Motion carries. you very much, gentlemen. You're back. Next item on the agenda is a review of conditional use permit application vendor sales of alcohol during rec ride on parcel number 8944071000006, otherwise known as 2510 or 2590 110th Street, Mobile, Iowa, 51039. So you want to read that information into the record?
Yeah, it's page 80, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, of course, back Pocket Brewing, the applicant is on the phone. And the property owner, Chad and Peter Schmidt, have filed for a conditional use permit application to sell alcohol along Rainbright's visit to Woodbury County on July 23rd, 2023. The proposed sales site is on parcel number 894407100006. The parcel is located in the agricultural preservation zoning district and is not located in the floodplain. The Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, as you know, approved ordinance number 69 effective November 16, 2022, authorizing this request as a conditional use in the AP district. Based on the information received and requirements set forth in the zoning subdivision ordinances, the proposal meets the appropriate criteria for approval. Staff recommends approval, and this for some background. To meet the zoning, you have to meet the zoning to get the alcohol license. So what happens is, if this conditional use permit is recommended here and approved at the Board of Adjustment level, the Board of Adjustment has the ability to authorize the conditional use permit like any permit that they would do. But once they have knowledge that that permit is granted, that gets submitted over to the auditor's office, and the auditor's office completes the paperwork for the alcohol license, and the Board of Supervisors are actually involved with. So there's multiple checks and balances when it comes to this scenario, as when this ordinance was put together, to show that we're meeting the alcohol requirements for sales, distribution at the site, and then the zoning basically lines up. So what would ultimately happen is, and I checked with the auditor's office today, that they started the initial process at the auditor's office, but the brakes are on until they have clarification how it's going to come out. So basically, so after review of everything, they've provided a site plan. Looking at the requirements, the key is to stay out of the right of way during that time frame. And the way the ordinance is, the sunsets, this is inclusion of right price. So this is truly one of those temporary conditional use permits to authorize it only during the right price. That's all I got. Yeah, that's all.
Let's see. Do you want to make any comments on the Back Pocket Brewing individual that's on the phone?
Yeah, this is Aaron Vargas. I'm one of the owners at Back Pocket Brewing. So just additional, I know that we provided quite a bit of information on the application, but this is year number 7 for us participating with RAGBRAI along the route. We operated a number of these stops across the state over those years. Myself, partner with the Iowa Craft Beer Tent, who runs the beer tent at the Iowa State Fair. And I know that they do a number of other events across the state throughout the year as well. But from our perspective, we've obviously had to deal with stipulations from every county and across the state, and we try to meet those requirements needed, and same for Woodbury County as well. We operate a safe RAGBRAI stop for the riders. We follow all safety rules, work with the state troopers along the route to make sure that we're doing everything that is required. And, you know, for us, we're a family owned and operated business in Coralville, and we've been open for 11 years now. And so we try to operate each stop as if it was, you know, our business here in Coralville. So, you know, we work well with the counties and law enforcement and making sure the riders are safe, and along with RAGBRAI as well, planning as they go across the state. But, you know, we provide all the insurance and, you know, dumpsters and porta potties and everything else required for the stop. And so, like I said, we've done, I think we're at like 87 stops that we've done. Never had any incidents or safety concerns. We have safety protocols in case someone were to get overheated or a number of other issues that may have come up when it's, you know, hoping for 70-degree weather, RAGBRAI, but, you know, it could be 98 and then humid. So you never know. But from our perspective, we treat it as if, you know, we're opening the front doors in Coralville, like we did today along the route. So.
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address this issue? And seeing none. All right, so I think we're ready for going into closed session again.
Motion to go into closed session.
Sorry,
Technically, it's a review, so it's not a public hearing. So.
gotcha. Okay, but never mind. All right, so if we have no further questions, entertain motion.
Motion recommending approval of the conditional use permit to allow the sale of alcohol during a special event of RAGBRAI on July 23rd, 2023, with the condition that the property owner and applicant shall obtain all necessary federal, state, and local permits, including but not limited to liquor licensing. Permit shall expire at 11:59 p.m. on July 23rd, 2023.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Ready for the next item? Okay.
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 JB Holland Construction applicant and property owners Eric Hennings and Donald Hennings of the Hennings Joint Trust filed a conditional application to establish temporary borrow sites to remove earthen materials used in phase 1 and 2 of the eastbound Highway 20 DOT project number 17-97-020-010. The proposed temporary borrow areas are located on parcel number 884704200001, parcel number 884704200003, and parcel number 8847021006. Both parcels are located on the south side of Highway 20. Each parcel is currently used as farm ground. The proposed cut area, parcel number 884704200001 and 884704200003 is 8 to 10 acres. The work area is 10 acres and the total excavation for export is 150,000 cubic yards. Okay, the proposed area on the same parcels again, and it repeats 8 to 10 acres. The work area is 10 to 8 acres. A little redundancy there. The parcels are located in the agricultural preservation zoning district, and a portion of parcel ending in 06 is located in the floodplain. However, this area will not be part of the borrow site. The applicants have provided the necessary documentation for stormwater management, soil erosion, dust control, haul routes, traffic entrances, hours of operation, duration of operations. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations that have been notified and requested to comment. Based on the requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, staff recommends approval. And the two borrow areas, to simplify things in the packet, we found them as borrow area number 1 borrow area number 2. And so staff recommends approval of the borrow area number 2. And with the condition the archaeological study be completed, that has actually been received tonight. So that threshold has been made for the area of borrow area number 1. And with the condition that an archaeological study be completed for the area. And the approval is contingent upon a written agreement between Magellan Midstream Partners and the property owners and applicants that the pipeline be removed at the location before any borrow activity can proceed on number 1. Without a verified written agreement, it is the recommendation of staff to either put a contingency or deny the application for borrow area number 1. And if I would point you to up on the screen here to kind of try to simplify things, because that was quite a statement loaded there. So this is considered the same project basically under the premise of the conditional use permit. And so this area looks pretty much fine, but you would have seen the statement in there by Magellan with the pipeline with this respective borrow area number 1 is where that pipeline is. And they had put the statement in there in the packet that no agreement has been made up to this point. I did call Brian Ferguson today and talked with him about it, and agreement still has not been made. They're just kind of waiting to see kind of what happens. So I'll have to kind of let the applicants who I believe are here tonight kind of explain that situation with borrow pit number 1. But borrow pit number 2 area, staff would definitely recommend that, but recommend the breaks until we have more clarification on borrow pit number 1. That's what I've got.
Okay, do we have anybody here that wants to represent the borrow pit?
So I'm Bill Holland with JB Holland Construction. I'll speak on behalf of ours and DOT's interest a little bit. So the basics of the project is Highway 20 getting regraded and rebuilt over the next 2 years. So the conditional use is, this is strictly a borrow site. It will be restored back to farmland when we're done. So it's short-term usage. It's not development of any sort. Archaeological survey, yeah, we're still, they've been sent preliminary with preliminary positive findings or nothing negative, and we're waiting on the final report, which we'll get on. As far as the borrow number 1 and the Magellan issue, you know, I guess we'd like just a little bit of feedback as far as timeframes and stuff like that from working that out. We don't have a problem with it being approved conditionally with that, with an agreement. So if an agreement is not worked out, then we're okay with that as an option, so that we don't have to come back through this process. And we can put that. So that's what our request would be.
Anyone else wants to comment at this point?
Yes, I'm Jason Crummey with the Iowa DOT out of our district office, construction engineer. And we definitely, as DOT is very critical project for our infrastructure, and we support this. But I also just want to offer if there's any questions on the project in general, for providing feedback if there's any questions. Yeah, and the portion of the pipeline, let's say, in regards to DOT side, on the north side of the highway, we did work well with Magellan on getting that pipe removed, working on that, and so this would be an extension of that same pipeline.
So that pipeline to the DOT currently, that's no longer in use.
That portion is abandoned. There is another active line that's further to the east that is not part of the center at all.
So that pipeline that's been removed, then is that easement to the DOT property gone, or does it still exist?
I think
David Schultz, I'm 649 Gordon Drive. I think that there is still a portion of the project that might have been said. I did that part of one of our projects. So I believe the easement still exists, but the pipe is not.
They haven't used that line for a while, have they?
I don't believe so.
Or contractor? Do we have anyone else in the public that wants to address this item? We're going to go into closed session. Sorry, I got this closed session stuff on my mind today. Okay, so, ready? Motion? Any more questions?
I can make, you can do it, Corey.
Don't fight.
So I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the temporary borrow area number 2 with the condition that the final archaeological study be completed and the area and approval of the temporary borrow area number 1 with the condition that archaeological study be completed for that area and with the condition that approval is contingent on a written agreement between Magellan Midstream Partners LP and the property owners and applicants that the active pipeline be removed at the location before any borrow activity can proceed. Without a verified agreement, recommend and deny the application for temporary borrow.
That'd be perfect if the contingency don't work out. It would be contingent, basically, it would expire if they don't know what it is.
The motion, I'm going to second. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody understand the motion? Okay.
Of course, that would let the others go to the Board of Adjustment next week.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the pipeline's gonna have, if you have a, when the decommission, you take the base out.
Depends where you get the road. It could possibly be part of the conditional use, depending.
I think they have to abandon it first, so they haven't abandoned it. And that's why I was curious if the easement still exists, they still have the right to put that pipeline. And that line hasn't been used for several years, but it's not abandoned. So I think that's where that,
After moving.
they can leave it in there because they still have the right until they abandon it.
I'm gonna do, I just will learn something, right?
Kind of have the next page.
And it was, before, when it was being used by a different.
The next item on the agenda is information and discussion concerning Woodbury County solar energy requirements or due to possible changes to zoning ordinance.
Okay, again, to be clear, this is an information / discussion to kind of look at possibly what direction the commission will consider taking. It's imperative to point out that on April 4th, the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors did send a direction to the zoning commission and staff to evaluate solar power in the unincorporated areas of Woodbury County. And what I put together in the packet is kind of a little brief discussion, kind of putting together both the concept of the residential or the basic accessory solar, as well as the the concept of the higher intensity or the utility-based solar. And as referenced in the packet, solar energy could be classified into a couple categories, including personal or private and utility scale systems. The permitting or allowed use of solar in Woodbury County could be construed as threefold. Utility solar systems are only allowed for consideration as a conditional use in the general industrial areas zoning district that derived out of the 2005 development plan, as well as the enactment of the 2008 ordinance, our current ordinance. So the community at the time had felt that industrial would be the place for those restricted utility-based units. Utility-based solar are prohibited in all of the other zoning classifications. The second prong is personal or private systems are considered in each zoning district via the conditional use permit process. So if somebody were to want to put one on the roof or put one out in the yard, and I think a couple years back we had one go through here as a personal scenario there. There is the possibility for agricultural-based purposes where a farmer could use the agricultural exemption if it's directly benefited the farm, where they're able to first glean income and being a farm-based opportunity to directly support the farm in terms of invoking that. So what it is the supervisors basically gave us direction to kind of look at what other communities are doing across the board. So I'll just try to divide this discussion up a little bit into the residential first. Sioux City for quite some time has been looking at, or they've used the residential under the premise of accessory structure, which means they consider solar panels to power a house or a business or even an industrial area to be accessory. In other words, there has to be a primary existing use on the property. Somebody lives there, and the solar would be a supplemental system likely to help them, reduce the power costs respectively on the property. So they allow that as basically a building permit if it's an accessory to something else. I asked them about principal use. They do not have a principal use. In other words, you can't get a parcel in Sioux City, put some panels on there and expect that to be the primary use. So you have to have a specific use that is supplementing in order to be allowed a building permit there. So Sioux City does that. Many of the other jurisdictions that I put in the packet there do that same thing where it's an accessory to the property via building permit. The way our ordinance is currently designed for residential based use, we take it to the conditional use permit under the interpretation of 3.03.3 that looks at a likewise use, because we don't have solar panels enumerated in there as an accessory use or accessory structure. So we brought it to the zoning commission in the past with the gentleman you might remember up at 110. It was one of the last ones where he put it up based on his house, but we basically said you have to go through the conditional use permit process, because the likewise comparison is if somebody were to do personal wind, or where they put one of those wind turbine generators to generate for the personal use on the property, they'd have to come here for a conditional use permit. And so that was what the comparative analysis was there to bring it through there. But I guess part of what the supervisors were interested in looking at was, okay, if Sioux City has it with just a building permit, and here we are in the unincorporated area, and out in a homestead somewhere, what should we do about panels that maybe go on someone's roof, or do we just look at that from the typical building permit as an accessory structure of the city? Various other communities do. So that's the accessory structure debate. Now, the other side of this is we know that technology has evolved when we look at the utility scale level. We've had a number of requests. I've had folks approach me in the past and say, well, I'm a farmer, it's an ag land, why can't I get involved in a utility levels, the solar relationship with the company. So I've had a few requests. I've had companies call me. I've talked to attorneys before that have looked at our respective zoning districts and said, why is it restricted to just that one area? And so it kind of evolved into this discussion where ultimately we got the directive from the supervisors to just kind of look at these respective areas. So one of the first things that we always do in zoning is we go back to the development plan. And that's what I tried to lay out there. And you'll notice that the future land use map of the packet, page 230, as well as 231. This right here is the priority for Woodbury County. And I know some of you have been around for some time and served kind of through the debate with the development plan. And you kind of know kind of generally what the priorities were, 2005, 2008. And kind of when this plan came up here, you see basically, we know where all the ag land is across Woodbury County. This green area, they kind of designated as open space or recreation type of area. It kind of looks like it kind of mirrors the Lowe's Hills there to an extent with this green area. This yellow area, of course, is the kind of the priority area for the residential. And so when I went back and looked at the development plan, there is reference in there to renewable energy, where it talks about, it kind of directly references wind, but it doesn't too much get into solar in the development plan, but it does, when we flip over to the zoning ordinance, one of the preambles or the prongs definitely points out looking at renewable energy as a possibility in the county. However, at the time, under the development plan, the priority was to put it in general industrial. What I can come up with is at that time, it was probably construed as an industrial-based activity, or maybe even a utility activity, where you have Mid-American down in that respective area. And so you kind of see where it kind of evolved into the larger scale, being an electrical energy generation type of scenario. I've had kind of looking through the different concerns, looking through other ordinances, other counties, which just simply put it in the packet is some examples. Some counties put the conditional use opportunity out there where you could go in ag land and come to the zoning commission, the board of adjustment, and say, I have X amount of acres. Why can't I be considered for solar panels here within the field here at this location? So we have some counties that have that as an opportunity for people to at least have the discussion on the conditional use out in ag land, AP land. There's other counties that have a standalone ordinance again, and in a scenario where you have specific parameters for what solar is, what the expectations are, what kind of areas of the county to put them in. So they have standalone. Some use the zoning ordinance. So it kind of comes back to very similar. It's not a direct comparison, but it's kind of a pathway that maybe they took on wind at one time or not. So it's kind of tough to have, two policies that directly mirror each other. But I guess the point is different counties do things different ways based upon the uniqueness out there as a whole. Woodbury County has the check here. If we look here, and let's say somebody does bring us hypothetically an application. They have ag land. Maybe they say, hey, the crop suitability rating is maybe not so good in this particular area. I'd rather put panels in this spot. And so they could possibly come and say, I'd like to possibly consider doing that. Well, right away we would tell them, that's prohibited because that's in the AP land. Well, the next step would be rezone. Well, if they apply for a request for a rezone, I'll be straightforward and say, staff would say, well, if this parcel is not abutting another industrial parcel, we're now within the issue of spot zoning. We've all discussed spot zoning before on numerous issues. We've been trained on it through our trainings in the past that spot zoning can be a very controversial thing, but it just kind of depends on the issue at times. There might be a time where a spot zone might be appropriate for a specific issue. Maybe a utility has to put some asset in for some specific purpose that might require a limited industrial. You might see those little substations or those things out on the corner of ag fields at time that have been out there. And they put those designations out there in the past. There's a few of those out there in the county. But with that said, the route to putting utility-based solar out in the ag land is a very tough threshold. If even a chance to have it happen is very unlikely. And so that's what I've told folks that have approached me when it comes to, could I possibly put a utility level, in other words, have a deal with a company and set up an easement or a special agreement on ag land to do that there. Well, all roads at this point lead back to, well, only the general industrial facilitates that in Woodbury County. So that's basically what we were asked to look at. And I do understand that out of respect that what was established out of the previous development plan and where we are at today, that's the makeup. And that was kind of the will of the public at the time with that previous development plan and that ordinance. However, with that said, we know technology has evolved. We're definitely in a different world in some respects in 2005 and 2023. And so it's definitely worth looking at in terms of this is a possible land use for consideration, whether it be amending to put a C in there to allow at least the discussion if somebody were to look at the utility scale. The other prong to this is if you don't look at utility scale and you just simply go back to farming, and a few solar panels under the ag exemption would probably, if it's justified under the ag exemption, that would probably be acceptable if the farmer knows that it's directly benefiting the farm and an aspect of under Iowa code, under what ag exemption is, that's acceptable. But if it outgrows that into the utility level, that's where these issues would arise based on this type of criteria. So with all that said, the Board of Supervisors again was an agenda item to have us look at it. And of course, look at the history of our county, look at what other jurisdictions are doing. Is this a possible opportunity, or are there other issues or ramifications that should be brought to the attention on why it was put out there to begin with? So there's definitely a lot of knowledge out there that we can look at and learn from to understand what is a priority for Woodbury County based on these issues, whether it's residential or whether it rises up to the utility level. That's pretty much what I have at this point. If this board sees a pathway kind of forward, the next step would be possibly maybe hosting a public hearing to look at it further, to maybe look at a proposal, whether if you would choose to address the residential alone, or if you were to choose the utility alone, or choose them both alone. It's kind of generally up to the general priority or what you all think would be appropriate, but do remember we do have that direction. So I can stop there.
Questions or comments? Commissioners?
I guess I remember when that guy came in and the difficulties he had for a residential solar installation. That's a path, I guess, I think we could make easier for people. Partly it's limited by the utilities. They determine the size of what an individual can put in based on their history of use. So they don't just let somebody put in a big field and say, well, it's just my house. So we have a limitation on what they can do. And, I guess I don't know where things will be a few years down the road, but if you're talking shingles or siding that's a solar panel, I don't know why we should not allow those types of uses and not make it fairly simple to do, such as a building permit. I mean, you know, it's not like they're gonna put in a field that's over 30 acres and because they can't do it. Even if we, you know, don't put restrictions on it, it's gonna be restricted by the utility bill. I'm assuming Sioux City has the same policy. They don't, do they specifically state the size or capacity of the structure?
Sioux City basically takes it down to building permit level with the setbacks. And so their specifications, and I did put it in your packet, is surprisingly pretty bare bones, where they leave it to a kind of a building permit discussion. They consider setbacks, and building permits trigger when you attach the structures too. So I've been driving around kind of the Morningside area over the weekend, and I was going down Lincoln Way, I believe, and I saw a set of panels just on top of someone's house. And so that would be the example. I talked to Chris Matson, that's one of the planners over there, and I grilled him on some questions about that. And he said, well, it's an accessory. They come in with a reasonable plan that if it's in the yard, it meets the setbacks. We're fine with it. We'll basically approve it if it meets the basic grounds. Of course, if the utility company's involved, they probably ask them, who are you working with, we talked to over there, but my understanding is that they treat the residential, and he was very firm to say that accessory, that was the key word for them. It's an accessory. Because I asked him, I go, okay, what is your ordinance for a larger scale if you wanted to put some out on a property? And he said, we only have accessory. You have to have something, a primary activity, whether at your home, you live there, or if it's your business and you want to use that as a way to have a power strategy for your specific property. So in a way, if we're saying residential, we probably should be saying kind of either private or private accessory use. And so I would probably suggest if you're looking at entertaining this as an accessory scenario, to keep the panels directly as accessory and add a category here, kind of similar to where it says electric wind generator, say solar panels, private use, and put the letter A in there across the columns. Because what the letter A does is it means that you don't have an open lot. You have to have the lot, you have to have the operation there on the parcel. So if you come to the office, you have a house and you say, hey, I want to put a few panels in, right away you're meeting that criteria that you have a principal use, you have a house, you have a single family dwelling, you're now qualified to go after that A there for the accessory to the property. If that's an empty lot, you can't be accessory to a non-use. So that's exactly what Sioux City is. I would say if we would consider putting the A across those columns, that would just make solar panels building permit level versus going through the conditional use permit level. And I will say, just to comment on the gentleman that came through here on 110th Street, there's a lot of confusion out there. These companies tend to contact these individuals and obviously market what it is, the services they have to offer. And different jurisdictions do things differently. So some jurisdictions are the building permit. It's the conditional use thing is really rare, actually, when it comes to the specific residential solar for the house. And so they get into this scenario where the company is out kind of shopping the permit, and the client, sometimes you're the client, you're the landowner, you expect everybody to kind of do the work for you. Then the company may not necessarily do all the work for them. And then they realize you have to have a conditional use permit. So we ran into it even with that gentleman. What's going on here? Because the companies sometimes are from way out of town. And so things don't really gel very well when it comes to, wait a minute, you gotta go get an abstract of this, you gotta explain the criteria and all of those things, and it just kind of, it's been a mess. And so I've had folks say, well, I live out on this homestead, it's just about 2.5 acres and there's no one else around. And so that's where the red tape gets really big when it comes to, the comparison of Sioux City to the non-farmer resident of Woodbury County that wants the assessed rate. So that's kind of the area when we stick specifically to the assessed rate, personal private use, where we've seen that issue.
Comments, questions? Thoughts? If you'd like to speak, yeah, come on up.
Usually open sailings, 1691 Street. I don't know when the comprehensive plan was put in. I think it was in 2010. Never even thought about solar. I think we were just thinking about industrial out there in the Fort Mill area. And right now, 3 weeks ago, 15 acres next to that cold storage plant just sold for 40,000 an acre. It's all getting to be industrialized. And I think it's going to be pretty high powered companies coming in there. And I think that's going to take, if anybody wanted solar, utility solar, it'd be out of question. But I think maybe something's got to get moved around a little bit, to make that possible. I think utility solar can be good. You gotta have your setbacks, you gotta have everything in there. Our president just put in kind of a death knell on the coal-fired plants. I heard by 28 they're gonna be shutting down. If that's the case, our utilities will go high. We need renewable energy, safe renewable energy, to replace what they're producing out there. We sure don't want to lose that workforce out there. Those are high-paying jobs. I think we have to just keep an open mind. I think, Dan, you said something about having, hearing where the public have input. I think that'd be great. I think we just have to look at different things that's going to come down, because this thing is kind of a long ways. We're just going to be looking at a lot of different things in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, take your one.
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street. I know it was mentioned earlier about the CSR. I don't think Woodbury County is really a good candidate for viewing it from the CSR standpoint, because if you look at our county, a lot of our poor CSR is Lois Hills. And Lois Hills soil actually goes all the way to Galva. So the whole county is actually, with the exception of the river bottom. I really think, rather than looking at any potential from a CSR standpoint, we'd be better off looking at it from a slope standpoint. If you put these solar panels on a slope with those Napier and Ida soil types, you will have gullies that won't stop, and there won't be anything you can do to stop them. However, if we were to make it so that it was just on a slope, because we have a lot of ground down in the river bottom that shows a relatively high CSR, but it's not very productive. Partly because CSR assumes drainage, and a lot of that ground doesn't have drainage. So I think in Woodbury County, CSR is not a good category to use, but rather I think maybe if we look at slope, will be a wise way of looking at it.
I just want to emphasize what Dawn said. I don't know, about 6-7 years ago, they redid the CSRs in Woodbury County. And I had a farm that went from a 47 CSR to an 82. And we had a meeting in this room with the people in the Salix and Newton area. And the reason why that came up is because we got taxed
on the 82 CSR. They went up. After 2 years, they did lower that tax rate. I don't know how they did it, but they lowered it on about 6,000 to 7,000 acres. Back to where it was at that 49 or 47 CSR. And there's a lot of ground down there. Yeah, that's right. I have, and it's the same quarter where I'll have 82 CSR, and on the other side, it could be as low as 37 or 39. It's that heavy loop clay, and on the other side is different. Which is the value of it.
Anything else? Comments, direction?
I guess I'd just emphasize on that then too. Handling those sites, if we do, through the conditional use gives opportunity to evaluate locations and the type of soil, whatever, you know, you can bring that all into play.
Also add a conditional use opportunity for.
Right, and look at it as a, I mean, I don't think we're gonna have 20 solar farms come in all at once. So I think it can be handled through the conditional use process. It just gives you the ability to look at it on its merits in that location.
You're talking about residential and commercial?
No, the residential, I think, is something we should separate out, I guess I feel, because it can work just about anywhere. And that's where the accessory structure, I mean, if the shingles are the solar panel, you could have them on every house in Woodbury County. So I don't think you need to have a conditional use. I think the accessory structure can be the method there. But in the commercial end of it, there are sites that maybe would work that we already have ruled out in the current ordinance. And that's where the conditional use can address each one and the capabilities and the potential for sites as an individual and how they hold their benefits versus the negatives.
The whole merit of having the C, having a C or not having a C means no or maybe. C is always pretty much a maybe. That allows somebody to get the scrutiny and decide based on a set criteria if something should be somewhere or not. And it allows the neighbors within that area to have a big input on the historical nature of that area so that they can bring things to the board's attention about that. And I've seen so many times where we've gotten some extra input out from the public that I think it's helped us, that goes into the information and the criteria. So that's an aspect of the conditional use. So it really kind of goes down to the priority of the county. If a policy like that were to change, how you go about changing it. The key aspect to look at is we have a big event coming up Wednesday night, and that is the open house for the development plan that Simcoe's been helping us with. And with that, the development plan is the underlying basis of all the land use activity we look at. And so they're collecting comments, and hoping the public will come in on Wednesday night. It's an open house from 5 to 6:30. Come as you go, you can. But the information that goes into that, then they take it back and they look more at finessing where they're at so far, because they have a draft that worked hard on putting the draft together based on how we jumped from 2005 up to 2023 in preparation for 2040. But nothing in the world is more proactive in terms of land use is when you do your development plan. But it's also not the most exciting. The public doesn't seem to get us engaged on what the priority is. We tend to be more reactive in public policy, as we all know. And so kind of with that said, right now is a window for folks to look at the development plan and really the priority for this map. Is this map, there'll be a new map. And as you've been through the development plans and the debates, what happens is then you go back to public hearing mode. Zoning Commission holds public hearing on the merits of the development plan. And the development plan is this what kind of county we want to be over the next so many years? I mean, the opportunity is right here to look at the priority. So the commission with public input, because it's public hearing based, if they come out with a product that you can hang the hat on and ultimately send it to the Board of Supervisors, there will be an opportunity at the supervisor level to go through that approval too. And I guess the point I'm making is we can't emphasize enough that the decisions that are made on all of our zoning policies tend to go back to the development plan. The item that we had earlier tonight with Mosier Landscaping, the way that that application was responded to, they considered the development plan, which I was really pleased to see that in the application because it's even asked. We see that a lot. I know we go through applications and they ask us, is it compatible with the ordinance? Is it compatible with the development plan? A lot of times we don't get great answers from the public. So when somebody starts citing that is when I get excited and I come back to earth and evaluate it. But when people are, pointing that out, that's the basis of us as a community. So Wednesday will be very helpful, but at the same time, we have an existing development plan and we do have direction from the supervisors. So if we are to look at evaluating this and maybe next month possibly we want to do a public hearing, maybe either for the residential proposal or looking at it in further detail. I guess what I'm getting at is I think that the current infrastructure the zoning commission evaluates, the Board of Adjustment makes the ultimate decisions, is a reasonable fix when it comes to the residential side. I'd have to leave it to everybody else to evaluate what the utility is, the utility scale, on how you see fit, on how you would place something there. But to me, probably if a major change or adjustment was made, you could add the category for solar residential and put the A's across, as I referenced before. And if you were going to reconsider the ag plan to an extent, it could be a possibility to amend that to put a C in the AP column. It could be that simple, or it could be further, depending on if there would need to be more criteria, or it could be to leave it as it is. So there's lots of options.
Any discussions or thoughts at this time?
I guess I would leave the question, would you want to see a public hearing next month on a proposal?
I guess I'd be for looking at, for sure, the residential side. The other part of it, I mean, I guess, whether it's a conditional use or an ordinance. The ordinance, I guess, going back to Leo Yoakum's comments, you put guidelines in that ordinance, and maybe it's a CSR, maybe it's 80, but then he can come up and explain to you that it shouldn't be an 80, it should be, 47 or 30 or whatever it may be. Same thing with the slope. Those conditions in the, not conditions, but those guidelines in the ordinance make it tough. Versus that's where I guess I would lean back towards the conditional use to address both those issues. So,
if I may, I would comment to this. I was impressed a couple of years ago that we just removed the zoning district designation. We just simply talk about the process. The commission and the Board of Adjustment effectively went through the conditional use process for Mid-America's Park. You remember that site down there on Fort Mill Road? And when we got the packet material together, we got the information, it was really fascinating how almost the right questions came out. The process sort of flushed its way out when it went through the zoning commission, the Board of Adjustment. Mid-American, it's down there near the airport, so we were asking them, how does it affect aviation? So we were trying to think. I think there was one question, I think it was at the Board of Adjustment, is there going to be glare, or is the color of it, is it going to, you can get to the point of aesthetics with the conditional use permit. We've had scenarios in the past, is there any screening, is there any way, if you hear some neighbors come in and maybe they're not entirely against the project, but at least concerned about aesthetics or looks, Tom was saying the conditional use permit has the ability to, reason out with the applicant, have a discussion and say, we could approve this maybe on the condition that you put some shrubbery in or trees in or, screening mechanisms or things of that nature. And so there is a way that process flushes out further questions. We get into access issues, safety issues. We try to think of every agency. When I send those notices out, I'm impressed sometimes where you don't expect something, all of a sudden you get this comment and it's like, wow, I'm glad we included the community in this and these groups of people, because you can get restricted to a set of enumerations, but the conditional use at times can be very innovative, as it allows you to bring up a different set of perspectives. And so the Mid-American thing there on Port Neal was quite significant. I remember when I first looked at it, it's kind of overwhelming, panel after panel after panel. I thought the commission and the Board of Adjustment did very well on bringing the things up and ultimately passing a resolution that effectively gave Mid-American the right to put that there. And so with that said, that would be the same process. So the debate would be, do you consider putting a C out there or not? And for some people, that will be the big part of the debate, that they don't want any consideration on ag land, or they do. So that's really what the balance is. That putting a C there allows for the asking for it. Can I possibly do this here? And then it's up to the boards to decide if that's appropriate or not. So I guess you would have some choices, kind of looking at what the supervisors are looking for is to, maybe recommend doing the A thing there for the residential. So there's a lot of ways you could look at it. You could look at addressing the residential or addressing both, or ask to put the C in there or not put the C. Sky's the limit in some respects. So I guess kind of working with you all, if you would want to consider a public hearing or some type of proposal, at least the residential or the utility, could definitely help facilitate that.
I think both. I would think for both. The accessory use and the conditional use.
I'm in agreement. After that gentleman was here and had a session with residential elements. I like the fact that you described the C of a baby.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. That's the thing that's good about it is, or it might happen, but only under. Yeah, I agree with Jeff on that.
Language that we need to have in place then, or?
What I could do is generally, kind of say it, what I would see it be, if that's the way you would kind of generally look at it. Again, it's a proposal, but just because we throw it out in the agenda doesn't mean it has to be done or not done. It's, we could notice it and you may not like the way it's set up, and then it would just take a bit longer. If there's amendments or, those type of things, there's fully the ability to do that. But generally, if I were to present a proposal, I would probably say amend, say the code section here, and say add solar panels personal or private, kind of like we did with this category here, and propose to put the accessory across the board. So basically the language would say add electric solar panels, private use to this column, and then put the A across the board, and it would be written that way as the proposal. Then if you would so choose to entertain the conditional use, it would basically say amend the land use summary table to include C under 18. That would be the bare bones of the debate, and it would basically be like we did with the rank. It would be an amendment. Basically, it'd probably take about one sheet really to, there's kind of an example in there on a subsequent item tonight that I'm going to bring up about the wind turbine debate. The last page of your packet for the wind turbine debate it would probably say amendment number 1, and what I had just described with the accessory across the zoning district, amendment number 2, places C in that column. So that could be a possible direction.
Do you have the information you need, the direction you need? You heard it?
I think I understand.
Does everybody hear what you think you hear?
Begin with an information item, there's a voting action.
Right.
All right. Moving forward. Where are we? Okay, information on the next item on the agenda is proposed revisions to Woodbury County Ordinance 56, amendment to modify section 6.1 with.
Yes, I have received direction from the Board of Supervisors to look at, in conjunction with the cities, as well as the conservation, the two things. The Conservation Board has sent us over a recommendation to protect the conservation areas. The recommendation, I believe, is 2,640 feet, or 4.5 times the tower height. What they're looking at is amending that standalone wind ordinance to introduce different increased setbacks. And the other proposal is to go to 2 miles from cities. And the justification for that is that when we do minor subdivisions, what did we say tonight? We have a extraterritorial review, that's 2 miles. Iowa Code 4.14, 414, basically talks about the city's rights within the 2 miles, and there's language in there, the unincorporated area does not have a ordinance that the cities can actually claim the 2 miles. I think we've talked before about this scenario, and the way the code is written, that the city would have to have representation from the county in order to invoke that area. The point I'm making is municipalities, incorporated jurisdictions have interest in the 2 miles near their community. And so the justification on amending this ordinance is that if a project gets placed within the 600 feet, that's much closer to the city. The communities have their development plans, just like the county does. They have their priorities on which way they want to grow out. Which areas they consider residential, which areas they have commercial or even industrial base. And so this ordinance is to really show respect for those distances that the city does have in those respective areas. And so the Board of Supervisors, this being a standalone ordinance, I bring it to you as an information item so that you know what's going on, but there's really no action on standalone that the zoning commission or just can take, because this is strictly related to an independent ordinance that the supervisors will. Just want you to all be aware of this. This will be coming up for debate. In fact, tomorrow night on the supervisor agenda, I requested a public hearing date. I believe that there may, beginning on May 9th, we're asking for the 3 public hearings to begin. Just let me double check so it's correct. May 9th, 16th, and the 23rd. I believe we're asking for 4:45 p.m. They haven't approved those dates yet. We're asking them to. That's all I have on that.
All right. Woodbury County Comprehensive Plan 2040 update.
Yes, I touched on that a bit earlier with the solar. The comprehensive plan, they've been working hard on it, and Wednesday night is kind of one of those things. It's one of the first chances to really show where we're at with it, show the different categories of the development plan, and continue to ask input. We've posted it out on social media. I know Citgo's done a lot of different notifications as well, but we're just hoping that members from the public come and learn more about the plan and offer their perspectives on, again, how they really want to see their county operate over the next 20 plus years. So that's all I got there.
So this is Wednesday night, 5 to 6.
Wednesday night from 5 to 6:30.
6:30.
Is this the first one they've held?
They've held community events, they've been down in Hornick, but this is the kind of the first, here's the draft for meetings. Kind of talk about it a bit more. Those other ones that they've had, Hornick and I think Mobile, or Aaron and myself, and have been out there kind of learning a bit from the public who had come, but we were kind of astonished. Citgo did do press releases and publish, but it's not as exciting to attend when you're doing it proactively versus reactively. So,
That's here.
yeah, that's here in the basement down this.
I'm assuming they're gonna have some more after this one.
Yeah, I'll have to kind of talk with Aaron a bit more because they are definitely leading the project. But if it goes beyond that, it's going to definitely be a very public meeting process when we get to the zoning.
So it seems like when they have those meetings, they'll have one. Oh, I didn't know about that. You know, then people will, well, what's the next one? That's what I was asking.
Yeah, and that's that right there. I wish there was a way that it's like doing the census, where you're trying to find everybody and get the appropriate opinion, because I've studied a lot the theory of rationality. The more information that you have, the more rational a policy is, and therefore you hopefully get a better policy, the more input that you have across the board. And we sure struggle in terms of the utmost input. We love to have more. I know in surveys they say very successful if you get to a 17% actually in academics, but I'd love to see the response rate higher.
All right, thank you very much. So we're ready to move on to the next item, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Public? No, not jumping out. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. How about commissioner comment or inquiry? Very quiet.
I wasn't at the last meeting, but the one comment I read, one of the individuals must have talked to an attorney that said conditional use wasn't the proper way to handle the pipelines. Do you know what?
That would have probably been in the public comment period.
Do you remember anything? I mean, why?
It says an attorney out of Omaha that it's not good and there should be an ordinance. I commented, the issue is it affects all pipelines. But it could be something that is pressure specific over a certain PSI, and be okay and stuff.
Okay, staff update.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we covered comp plan. The Iowa State training, if you haven't confirmed already, we encourage you to Thursday, April 27th. It'll be down at the Hilton Garden Inn, and it's always a good program to kind of go through the zoning concepts, refresh on them. Always kind of an interesting training. So if you're free, please consider it.
So we're doing tonight's meeting, we're doing Wednesday's get together, and you want us to come Thursday.
It's a busy
Take out of this week.
Have a thick pack on. So
Very
it's-
good. We're gonna talk about.
So busy time. So that's the one thing. And the other thing too, present, the federal government has posted in the Federal Register and they're posted in the Sioux City Journal that they're initiating the FEMA maps. Yeah. So this is round 2. Last time there was an error, I think, on the key to the map. But basically, I believe it's going to go through kind of a 90-day period up through July 24th. And basically what it is the public is encouraged to look at the draft floodplain maps and see what their land looks like. We're kind of at the stage now with the floodplain maps that if anybody had any major disagreements with the floodplain maps, you would have to get to the point of having scientific or technical data, which would be basically survey data to demonstrate how you feel about your land relative to the floodplain. I think the net effect across the board was the floodplain looks better for a lot of people, but always with the net effect effect of somebody that may go in, so we can't promise the moon that the flood market was a lot better for people, but there is some areas where they use the 2-foot LiDAR interval, where the maps will ultimately look better. But we're kind of in this 90-day period. And so if a community, it's much more actually geared for the community or the fair station. So if Mark Nara or one of the major agencies really had some scientific data, they could, probably go through the challenging part, but it doesn't mean landowners can't either. So I definitely encourage. There is another pathway when I talked to DNR, where we're used to the LOMAs, the letter of map amendment. So there is kind of a period at the tail end before the adoption of the maps where LOMAs would be considered. But anybody that previously had ones, well, the maps kind of wash, and there's brand new maps. So people would ultimately have to go back and readjust and calibrate with a surveyor. So as of right now, it's looking like next summer. We know things can change, and it's been kind of hard for us as staff because I know over the last couple of years, I go back and look at my notes and we were telling folks, summer of 22, summer of 23, and I had an individual today that asked me about the status of the maps, and we ultimately have to go back and apologize to the federal government when it comes to the delays in those respective maps. So we're expecting some action, at least hopefully this year. We were proactive last spring when we passed the ordinance for the floodplain change. So we're actually in good shape when it comes to the ordinance. Otherwise, if what happens is they go past the new maps and then they dictate to us to pass the ordinance. Now this time we can say, hey, we already did. So we're in good shape when it comes to that. So kind of be looking for that. You might see some media attention, a press release will go out, but I think that they have they did 2 publishings, possibly 24 for, I'd go back and look, but the release is out on the website. So. And that should be it for me.
Are you taking notes,
I've got my notes, make sure I covered. We covered and recovered.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you for all the items on the agenda. Without a jump to adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your participation.